Hey, this is Nick from Remedy667.com, the best place on the internet for horror-themed fonts and fonts based on classic horror films. Today we're going to be taking a look at the lettering from Spider Labyrinth, which, if you've seen, is a pretty wild Italian film. This lettering is pretty amazing, though. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started by breaking down with what we have. We got an A, we got a B, we got a D and an E, but that D, or that E, is connected to the R bone. So let's go ahead and make a clip there and delete that extra little bit. Wow, the top of that E is wild, how short that is. The H and the T are connected. So I feel like the H would be smooth and the T would come off of that. I, L, and P. There's two different R's, which is pretty interesting. But I think we're going to use the top R for our general R and that T, and then we'll grab, ooh, you know what, I didn't realize there was two of those either. Holy moly. So we'll grab the Y. I feel like the T actually goes off there, and this R probably goes out a little bit as well, just like the E. All right, so let's see, what do we need to make? We need to make a C. Looks like probably one of the more complicated characters we may have to make, and what we've got to work with here is going to be an O. So let's think about how to get there. Let's undo and align that to the selection, not the artboard. So let's start with low-hanging fruit. I'm going to say it's probably going to be pretty easy to do the M. So I'm going to start there by, we're dissecting the H into the two vertical parts, and I'm going to take this A and actually dissect it up twice as well, because it's not very pointy. So I'm not an expert on this film, but I will tell you that it's very strange and has to do with spiders. Who are, and a woman named Genevieve. And that's all I'll tell you, because I don't know much more than that. It is pretty wild, to say the least. All right, so that's our M. We're actually going to take this up a little bit in there, and that makes it look a little more complete. Love it. Now you'll notice it also looks like it could use a bit more angle. I have an interesting idea for this. It's not really an interesting idea. I don't know why I said that. I'm just going to flip around the D and cut it and make that our C, which I actually am probably going to take some part of a different letter, but I'm definitely going to use this for the G, and I'm going to use that I for the G as well, which means we're going to actually substitute that I out for the other I. I duplicated that, right? Yep. Sometimes I have this habit where I'll just start chopping letters up and not paying attention to whether or not I duplicated them or not. And I want to try and not really break that habit, but not do it as much when I'm recording. This F is going to be pretty interesting. I actually want to use this for the F. First thing I want to do is angle that a little bit. And I'm actually going to take this middle bar whoops. Yeah, probably also want to grab an actual middle bar for the F itself. I feel like this should be kerned pretty tight, like with a lot of collisions. If you noticed in the original poster, I'm sure you did, it looked like there was a lot of ligatures, but I think what that actually was just a lot of collisions. I want this C to like hoop a little more. Uh-oh, the beach ball. All right. I've been having all sorts of problems with Adobe lately as far as being able to drag images into Illustrator and switch back and forth between Photoshop, and apparently this new beach ball thing that's going on now. I always think it's my fault because I work with some pretty overly sized files a lot of times. I am going to make an O from this R. Shh, don't ask. Starting with a U that I just made from that R. Do it at a little bit of an angle, add a little bit of a skew. I feel like that looks pretty good as a U. And now with his hat, he's going to make a perfect O. This is going to need to transform reflect because it's actually wider on one side than it should be. Or maybe not than it should be, but than I want it to be. And I want to pull that side over. G, we're going to rotate that. And add that little bit of an angle that we've been doing with all these. I'm going to have to fix the angles on this. One thing that'll happen a lot, especially with like really cool hand lettered lettering, is the angles will be all off. And when you look at talk to people who do lettering, like they'll talk about that as being a thing that happens, you know, when you're like practicing or learning, like that's something you want to try and fix. And with type design, that's definitely something that you want to try and fix because that breaks the system. And type design is all about having a structured system. And then when I do it, it's all about looking like I don't have a structured system, which is kind of the way I do a lot of my artwork. But this is coming together pretty nice. That S is wild style, almost literally, but not exactly. So from a J, I'm going to build the J out of that O. And this I. Oh! There it is. You heard it here first. the giant hoop on that J. I'm going to use the center of the M to make my V, and then the N to make my W. This is coming together really quick now. So we got the V, we got the W. I think I might actually, no, it's definitely going to be that. But I want it rotated a little bit. Yeah, not that much. It's a beautiful thing there. How am I going to make an X? I mean, I guess I could make it with the R. That's also how I should make the K. I feel like this K should come together like so. What is happening with you, foolish man? The doorbell ringeth. I bet it's the mailman coming to deliver that precious junk mail. So I want that to be the top of the K, right? So my K is going to look like that, which is pretty cool and fits. It looks boss, whatever that means. What do I say we got less? An X and a Z? Well, let's go ahead and make the Z, because that's easy, but it's also crazy because the way this is. I'm going to transform that, reflect, get that angle back this way, and this is funny because I'm actually going to do because neither of those were really big enough for the Z. Gonna build the Z out like that. Which is also, I don't think that's actually how the Z would look. I think this bar that I made coming off the top like that would actually be going out like that. And this would have a couple little textures to it. All right, X marks the spot. Let's get our K and our Y. Waka 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 out here and delete that. Get this over here. Delete that. Right? And rotate that around. Right. And come down a little bit. And maybe bring that in a little bit and angle. And then put it back. Group that. Make the angle just a tiny bit less. That's actually a really good looking X. So, what do we got here in the Spider Labyrinth today for our Horror Font Friday typeface alphabet of the week? It's not really a typeface yet, but it's definitely an alphabet of the week. I feel like every week when I'm like, all right, it's going to look like this, I always rearrange this so much. That's what I want. Group, group, group. duplicate, shake your head. I want that to be white. Line these in the center. Compress them a little bit and get them all unaligned. And there you go, our typeface of the week, the Spider Labyrinth. A probably strange masterpiece to some of Italian horror, to others a very confusing film. Yeah, it's a pretty sweet looking piece of lettering though. So join us next week when we look at some more pretty interesting pieces of lettering. Or if you want to check out any of the fonts we currently have available, go to remedy667.com and dig through them. You can type with them, you can look at them, you can comment on them, all that stuff. See you next week for Horror Font Friday.